Okay, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of PEP Talk. This is episode 23, and I am just solo hosting today, but I have a very special guest on with me. I have my dear friend, Andie Pask, on the podcast today. Andie, thanks for joining.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me back.
So I kind of thought that we would do like Girls' Day on the pod, kicked
Love it.
Nico out of the recording studio, and just thought we could noodle on about so many things that Andie and I have chatted about amongst our many hours shared on the trails. And I just thought would be really relevant to talk about to do with a race that Andie has organized and is upcoming. And I want to dive more into that. But first of all, just to start, I feel like some people that have been listening to this podcast may either know you in person or remember you from joining our UTMB Q&A podcast. So if you don't know, which you should, Andie completed UTMB, and so we had that whole experience together, and she joined one of our previous pods to answer a bunch of questions about that experience. But for those who don't know you, why don't you share a little bit about who you are, like where you live, what you do, the personal,
Sure.
professional, whatever you want to go.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Andie. I live in Victoria. I definitely wear many hats. So I'm a mom of two. My daughter Lola is 12 and my son Wake is 9. I am a wife. I am a coach with Peak Endurance. So Nico and I are both coaches and we lead the group runs. More recently, I started leading a decaf group run on Wednesday mornings. So a little bit more chill, a little bit less volume. Um, when I'm not doing run coaching, I do strength and conditioning actually out of my house. So we moved this past summer and now I have a garage which we turned into a home gym. And I have clients that come to me now, which is so lovely. And yeah, I have like kind of throughout the day clients that come in and out, and we do hour-long sessions out of my home. And I also do like strength programming for people. So if they want to work out either at their own gym or at their own home, I create programs for them. So a number of them are runners, but some are not runners and just want like a full body strength program or have different goals. So I help them with that. I also am a nutrition coach. So I do a lot of nutrition consulting with people and helping just to like teach more about nutrition, help lead them towards their goals. We do food logs and kind of assess those, and then talk about ways to tweak and make just their life choices and their fueling choices better. And then I also am a runner, so yeah, like Mercedes said, we do a lot of our training together. Coming off of UTMB, so last year was a big year with a lot of running, and this year has felt relaxing on the run front compared to last year. I'm not actually signed up for anything at the moment, which is really weird because it's been a number of years that I've just been training for kind of the next big thing. And so for the first time in a long time, I'm just kind of focusing my energy elsewhere to try to build the run community a bit more. So,
Yeah, love
yeah.
that. I know, obviously, we've become very close friends, and so I've seen this like evolution of you, wanting that home gym and that space so that you could create a space where people could come and you could train them. And so it's been so cool to see you have that dream come to fruition, and just, I don't know, obviously so many lifestyle benefits and stuff with that. So that's been very cool. And yeah, I think both you and I have been on similar, I don't know, journeys post UTMB of just very much like wanting to take a pause from all of that, and just
Yeah,
like, yeah, like you said, I think you articulated that very well, just putting your energy elsewhere, which isn't a bad thing. It's just like it does
totally.
feel different, and I'm sure you could relate because there's so many people signing up for things. It's that time of year, right? And so
Totally.
it's the feeling of like, oh shit, should I be also? And then you have to kind of think back to your why. Like, am I just signing up for things because other people are signing up for things, or because
Exactly.
I genuinely want to be there?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Okay, so I mean, like I said, we talk all the time, and I always feel like part of our conversations are worthy of talking about on a wider audience, or to a wider audience rather. Just because we talk about our own journeys in sport, we talk a lot about fueling and our journeys with that, and I thought right now would be a particularly good time to have you on because of a really exciting endeavor that you've started on with an upcoming race. So, if folks haven't heard, Andie is putting on with Peak Endurance, but Andie's really leading the charge, directing the race and everything. A local trail race here where we live on Vancouver Island called Seymour Bloom. And you guys have recently started selling registrants for that, and it's supposed to take place in February. So I just thought this would be a good time to maybe talk a little bit about that race, and then we can kind of talk about our own experiences about being women in sport, because that's what Seymour Bloom is all about. So maybe if you could just very briefly summarize or give a bit of an intro on what Seymour Bloom is, who it's targeted at.
Mhm.
Yeah, start there.
Awesome. Yeah, so Nico and I had this idea, I don't know, at least a year ago, that we wanted to build the trail community and we want to get more women out to the trails. And so we thought, wouldn't it be cool if we created kind of a women's only beginner friendly trail race in our backyard trails that was, yeah, like really beginner friendly and could kind of be the entry point for women's trail journey. So we created Seymour Bloom, which is like literally in my backyard. We moved really close to Thetis, and so I actually ran the course today, and for me to run from my doorstep to the start line is 5 minutes. So it's very close to me. But so anyway, so we created a 5 kilometer route and then a 10 kilometer route that goes over Seymour Hill, which is kind of on the east side of Thetis Lake. And that's kind of how it starts. So you go up and over Seymour Hill, and then you go through Mackenzie Creek. And so the first half of at least the 10K course is kind of technical. Like, you know, you're going to have a bit of a climb. There's rocks and roots. And then kind of the second half is a little bit more flowy. So it still is challenging for people, you know, for a starting race. Like it's no walk in the park for sure, but it's definitely, you know, an entry point and user friendly, and people can still do it as their first race. So yeah, we wanted women or people who identify as a woman to feel like this is a safe, you know, inclusive place where they can start trail running and trail racing. Because I think often, even myself, like when I go to these trail races, you look around and it's mostly men. Like UTMB, I I can't remember how many women there were. I think there was only like 200. Does that sound right? Out of
Yeah, I think it was like under 300 or something.
under
Yeah.
300 women, which is
Hmm.
ridiculous. And so, you know, trail running is just such a big part of my life and of our life. And we've made friends. We've had so many amazing conversations. We've got to experience other countries and just like beautiful sunrises and spending time in the trees. And I just could go on and on about how trail running is such a big part of my life and why I love it so much. And I want more women to experience that, but I want to give them an entry point. So I'm hoping that this race can be like something that maybe does feel scary, because if you're somebody who doesn't usually run, a 5K trail race might feel scary, but I also want it to feel doable. And so it's something that you can do maybe with your girlfriends. We're not even timing people. Like, really, the point is participation and to do the thing. And then there's going to be some wicked prizes at the end. There's going to be tons of Lulu swag. Like, it's going to be just a really fun event. So, yeah, I hope that people feel like even though they're not, quote unquote, like a runner or somebody who runs all the time, that this is something where they'll still get the opportunity to experience the beautiful trails that we have with a group of women, and feel like they've accomplished something big.
I love that. And I think that I could already see that it is achieving some of what you described. I know I have the personal experience of I have a group of girlfriends who I have known forever, and so I haven't known them from running. I got into running later in life, and
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of them are have signed up or are interested in signing up. And one of my friends commented, and she was like, "Oh, it's like your worlds colliding." And I was like, "Yes," and I love this so much. But I think that it's serving that group of people, right? And I know that when it was first announced, I did have a friend reach out to me, and she kind of asked that question of how competitive is it? Like, should I be signing up essentially? So, like, yeah, what would you say to somebody that asked you that kind of question? Or like maybe they're like, I'm not fast enough to go to a race, or like
Mm-hmm.
I don't belong there because I'm not like a quote unquote athlete.
Right. Yeah, this is definitely not a competitive race, and that is not what we want it to be. Like I said, we're not even timing people. There's not going to be like a first, second, and third prize awarded. Like, it's very much for, um, the beginner runner, to feel like this is something that they can do and you belong here. Like, if this race inspires you and this is something that you want to do, please come. And if it feels super scary, do the 5K. I, like I said, I did the 10K today, and it's definitely doable for people who are just getting into running. It's going to take you longer than obviously a road 5K would, but as long as you have your water and you're having your snacks along the way, it's definitely doable. So yeah, so I just hope that people who don't consider themselves runners, or um, are just feeling intimidated by potentially other really fast women, like, I don't. This is not the vibe. This is not going to be a competitive race. I think that um, the women that are really fast probably are not going to be running this race. Or if they are,
Yes.
they're doing it probably with a friend or a sister
Yeah.
or a mom. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. I think that especially people that are not involved, maybe in running really the scene at all, or maybe their only exposure is like road races, and it does look very serious and competitive. And I think that's such a big difference. Like, we know from road and trail racing, we talk about all the time how when you're in the midst of trail races, you'll be chatting somebody up, you'll be having a conversation, learning about them. So I would just say, even for competitive runners, there's a very different vibe. But then, particularly, obviously, with Seymour Bloom, that is a really big emphasis, right? Is like you're
Yeah.
meant to just go out, have fun, like chat with people. It's
Totally.
not supposed to be competitive. And actually, like you touched on it, something else. I had a friend message me. She went out and she did the 5K course because she signed up for the 5K, and so she
Okay.
wanted to like see what it's all about.
Yeah.
And she sent me a message just basically saying, I'm so slow. That took me so much longer. Or I think she thought it took her as long as maybe a 10K she had done in the past or something. And I was like, that doesn't mean you're slow. Like, that is totally normal. The trails are so different. So that's another thing to
Absolutely.
remind people of too. Like, you can't compare those times, right?
Absolutely. I was actually thinking about that while I was out there today. Like, a couple things that I really hope that people know is, like, number one, a big part of trail running is hiking. And
Yes.
so don't expect to run the whole thing. Like, you are going to be hiking a lot of it, both because, well, there's just some parts that are kind of steep, and also it's rocky and rooty in sections. And it's slow going because you're having to, like, kind of tiptoe through roots and stuff. Um, yeah, and it's just, and sometimes if it's like a bit windy or if it's just really hilly, like, you can't compare a trail race to a road race, or like your time, and even trail race to trail race, like,
Mm-hmm.
you can't, it's not like, oh, well, I did this trail race and it was a 10K and I did it in like an hour or whatever. So I should do this one. Like, depending on what the elevation and the terrain is, as you know, like it can be very, very different. So,
Totally. And I think too, like, that's part of, I know what we really love about the trails is that you don't have to focus on your pace or comparing, to a previous
totally.
run or something like that.
Yeah.
I remember first getting into trail running and just being so stoked at the idea of not staring at my watch every 5 minutes to
Yeah.
know what my pace was. And like, yes, it's a good idea to keep certain things in mind and maybe like make sure your heart rate's in check and things like that. But for the most part, like you don't really have to worry about the metrics. You can kind of just go and
Exactly.
get in a flow state, and that's the beauty of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, Okay, I thought I would just like ask a few questions that maybe I've already been asked, or maybe just like would be relevant for people who are planning on doing the race.
Mhm.
I was thinking about gear. So, again, maybe thinking about people, women that are totally new to trail running. Would you say there's any must haves in terms of gear, or like just something that might be a nice to have, that kind
Mhm.
of thing?
I think if you're able to, a pair of trail shoes would be good to have for this race because it is technical in quite a few places, and expect for your feet to get dirty. Your shoes are going to get dirty. They're probably going to get muddy. My shoes got completely muddy today. It's probably going to be wet still that time of year. So if you have trail shoes, you'll just have more durability, better tread. They'll just feel grippier and you'll feel more secure than if you have a road shoe, which has kind of a flatter bottom and doesn't really have the same like lugs, or, it's just not going to be as stable on the rocks and roots and stuff. Um, I like to run in shorts. I find it like I'll only really run in pants if it's around 0 or colder. But some people prefer running in like tights or leggings kind of thing. But make sure that you have a pant or a short that you feel comfortable in. Nothing like too restrictive, or like a khaki material or something like that. So I'd say either like a flowy short if you feel comfortable in that, or like a spandex, like a biker short, or like a legging kind of thing on the bottom, and then on the top. The race is February 28th, so that time of year, the weather could be anything. I'd say probably dress in layers is best. So if it's calling for like it to get above 12 degrees, you might want to have a tank top underneath, or like some kind of t-shirt, like well-fitting t-shirt. And then I would say a long sleeve over that. And if it's raining, you might want to have some kind of a rain jacket or like a light shell. And then if you do have some kind of like a handheld water bottle, that might be good if you're doing the 5K. And if you're doing the 10K, you may even want to have some kind of a hydro vest. So like um, kind of the running vests that we wear that hold the soft flasks that carry your water and your snacks. Just because like I think that people are going to be out there probably from like about an hour and a half to 2 hours kind of thing. So that's a pretty substantial amount of time. And we do have an aid station that's kind of in the first half of the race. I think it's probably about 2 to 3K in. So you can, refuel and have water at that point. But um, I just think if you're able to carry some more water and snacks on you, that would be a good idea. And then a hat is always a good idea too, especially if it is raining. So yeah, I would say that's kind of the gear that I would recommend.
Okay. Love that. Yeah, I feel like, especially living where we do, you kind of have to be prepared for everything and then to sort of
Totally.
make a last minute decision on what you're actually gonna
Yeah,
wear.
exactly.
Um, and I think we always find that you start off like you should start off feeling a bit cold, because if you start off feeling warm, that means as soon as you start running or as soon as you encounter a hill, you're going to be
Yeah.
extremely hot and you're going
Yeah.
to want to like shed all your layers. So I
Absolutely.
always force myself to like be a little bit chilly to start, because I know it'll pay off once I get going.
Absolutely. I made that mistake today. I had been cold because I was teaching in my garage all morning, and so put on my shorts. I had my long sleeve shirt on, and I was like, "Oh, I'll just wear a shell. Like I'm a little chilly." And I was probably 7 minutes in, and I'm like, "Why did I wear this? Like, this. It was sunny. It was beautiful out.
Yeah.
Like, I should have known." But anyways, I ended up wearing that jacket around my waist for the rest of the
Yeah.
run. So yeah,
Totally. I
yeah,
know. I hope we have a dreamy day like today on race
yeah.
day, because it was so nice out today.
So good. It's
But you
fun.
never know. You never know here
It's
in
true.
Victoria.
Yeah.
Okay, you kind of touched on this earlier, but I feel like we should put another emphasis on just like the idea about. I remember like doing my first trail race, and I remember like like shortly after we started, encountered a hill, and I just like kept charging up running, and I like look around me and everybody else has like stopped and started hiking, and then it was just kind of like, oh, like should I be doing that too? And so I kind of just fell in line and just sort of copied what other people were doing. But
Yeah.
it is so true, like you don't know before you get involved that it's totally normal and encouraged actually to hike uphill, or even on the flats. Like if you haven't been doing a lot of running, like maybe it makes sense for you to be taking walking breaks. So I don't know,
Totally.
what's your kind of like recommendation and thought there? And I think maybe like tying this in too, because I wanted to ask about if you had any like tips or guidance for women who maybe they signed up and they have this goal to do this, but they haven't really been doing a lot of like training or running. So, they have some time to prepare, but not a crazy amount of time. So I don't know if you kind of want to tie those things in together, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like we talk about going training by heart rate a lot, but I think too, just like Nico and I use what's called an RPE, like a rate of perceived exertion, which is kind of a self scale of like ranking your effort between 0 and 10. And I think that we have like a really good kind of internal gauge of the effort that we're working at. And so I think more importantly is like just go by effort. So, if you can maintain kind of like a 4 to 6 kind of effort throughout the race, and maybe you push it towards the end, but like you don't want to be redlining the whole time, or you're not going to be able to finish. Like if you're feeling like 5 minutes in, like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm at a 9 out of 10 and I can hardly breathe because we just are going up this hill, like you're not going to enjoy the race and you're going to want to quit. So if you find, you're like jogging along and you're feeling pretty good and you kind of check in with yourself and it's like, yeah, I feel like I'm probably at like a 4 to 6. And then you hit the hill and your pace that you were jogging that felt like a 5 is all of a sudden feeling like an 8. You're like, okay, let's slow this down. Let's, walk up this hill, bring my effort down a little bit. Like, yeah, you're still going to be breathing heavier, obviously, because you're going up a hill, but you want to think of like pacing yourself. So same thing in training. If you can get out for some runs or some like walk runs, I would encourage people to do if they haven't been training. And you can go by feel as well. So maybe you like jog for a bit and then you're like, okay, I feel like I'm really starting to breathe heavy and like my heart rate is really getting elevated. Then take a walk break. And the other thing is like if you're going from basically not running at all to like, okay, I'm just going to get out and try to crank out and run like a 10K. um, your tendons and ligaments and joints, like they're not used to that either, and that often takes longer than your muscles to adapt. So we have to kind of like gradually build up. So I would say, like, if you're going literally from doing nothing, start with walks and find some hills around you, either like neighborhood hills, like it can be literally roads that are hilly, or if you have trails that you can get to nearby, get to the trails and do some hiking there. I mean, ideally hiking on trails, just so you kind of get used to having to step over rocks and roots and that kind of thing. But I think walking is probably the best start. And then maybe you can progress to adding some jogging in there and then listening to your body and backing off um, when it feels like you're getting really out of breath, or like it's harder to talk if you're with a friend, or like you can just feel your heart pounding.
Yeah. Yeah. Good advice. Yeah, I know like Nico talks to me all the time about like some of the biggest mistakes that people like you guys as coaches will see with athletes is like trying to do too much too quickly.
Yeah,
So maybe yeah, you get a race on the calendar and it's like, oh, like I only have X amount of time, so I need to like start ramping it up really quickly, and that often will just lead to like injury, and
totally.
then you're just like more derailed than if you had just taken it slow. So don't like panic, even though it is, you know, in a month or a bit more than a month now. If you can get out several times before then, great, but don't feel like you have to panic train, I think is a big thing.
Totally.
Okay, and then one other thing I wanted to touch on, and you kind of briefly mentioned it as well, but is if somebody said, do I need to eat during this? Like, what would your guidelines be? Is there maybe a time frame? Or, yeah, just talk about
Mhm.
the fueling side. Because some people might say, oh, I'm only going to be out there for, you know, an hour and a half or 2 hours. Like, does
Mhm.
that mean that I need to eat?
Yeah, yeah, it's a big one, and it's a lot of people don't really know. And I would say that yes, if you are out there for an hour and a half to 2 hours, you should be eating. Typically, with trail running, we tend to go like the guideline is more by time as opposed to distance, because 2 kilometers, it might take you 12 minutes, or 2 kilometers might take you 20 minutes, just depending on like the elevation and the terrain and that
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. And your body doesn't know that it's been like 2 kilometers or whatever. It knows how much time it's been. And so I would say that, yeah, if you can eat probably every like 30 minutes, that would be good to have some kind of a snack. So I mean, maybe it doesn't have to be a gel. Like maybe it's a gel. We are going to have some precision nutrition on the course, and I'm not sure if it'll be the gels or the chews or what it'll look like at this point. But um, some people prefer like real food, like maybe it's some dates or like one of those fruit leather bars. I know we both love those, or Rice Krispies. You were talking about those the other day. Basically, you want like a simple carb, that's got like a good kind of sugar source so that your body can use it quickly, and something ideally that is low in fiber, fat, and protein, because really what your body needs when you're working out is that carb to keep going. So yeah, carbs that get digested quickly are best. And if you can eat them, yeah, I would say probably every 30-ish minutes, that will keep you going and keep your energy coming in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
love that. And I think that when you were selecting what you were going to eat, yeah, you listed some great options. I think you have to think about you have to enjoy it when you're not running, because the chances of you then
Yes.
wanting to eat it when you're running are
Yes.
going to go down substantially.
Totally. Exactly. Yeah.
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 So yeah, I feel like, you know, with longer trail races, we've had experiences of not wanting to eat our stuff, so maybe that won't be quite as relevant. But you know, 2 hours, that's a long time to be out there. So
Yep.
pick something that you might like look forward to, or you really
Exactly.
don't mind eating, because if it's gross when you're not running, it's going to
Yeah.
be 10 times grosser when
Yeah.
you're running.
Yeah. No, don't do that.
Um,
Could be candy, could be a cookie, just something
yeah.
something that you'll be like looking forward to.
Yeah, yeah, love that. Okay, I think that was kind of all I wanted to touch on for Seymour Bloom. Yeah, do you have any like anything else that you wanted to mention or talk about in regards to the race?
Um, I mean, just something that I thought of that when I was running today, because it was kind of wet and mucky out there, and who knows, in a month and a half, it could be like things could dry up a lot. But if you have signed up for the race or you're planning on it, bring an extra pair of shoes for the end, and potentially a change of clothes, because we are going to be having a ton of prizes given out, like drawn at the end of the race. And you might just be more comfortable if you're in some dry shoes and warm clothes. So yeah, I would say bring something kind of cozy to change into for afterwards. And then the second thing I was going to say is if you haven't registered yet, go to the Peak Endurance website, and there is under the tabs there's races you'll see, and then you can fill out the registration form right there on the website.
Awesome. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
only taken me like 5 years of trail running now to learn that I have to bring something to change into when we get back to the car after my run, because
yeah,
you feel all warm and fine, and then like 20 minutes into your drive home and you're like bordering on hypothermia
totally.
because
You're
the
shivering because the
sweat.
sweat has cooled, and it's the
Yeah.
worst. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, bring something to put on top or change into for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I love it. I'm so excited. I am obviously going to be out there. I'm going to be like volunteering and just
Awesome.
helping out, and so I'm so excited to see friends and new friends' faces out there.
Me too.
But yeah, it's meant to be inclusive. It's meant to be beginner. So come out, have fun. And yeah, can't wait.
Me too.
Okay, so I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and on this theme of women in sport, I thought we could talk a little bit about our history, just sort of being like women in trail running. So maybe just like talk us through your background, like how you kind of came into maybe just running, the running scene, and I don't know if you have any anecdotal experiences on this theme of women sort of being underrepresented. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but yeah, just talk us through your experience and what that journey has looked like. Because I think too, like, you know, people might see you online and see you as a coach and think, you know, you're so accomplished and this might just all come really easy to you. But you've had a long journey with getting into sport, and your career, your athletic career, if you will, like is tenured. So I feel like it's relevant to hear.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, growing up, I played a number of sports, but I hated running. Like, I remember having to run in phys ed class in middle school and high school, and it was the worst. I dreaded it. I didn't run for cross country or anything like that. I was a volleyball player. I figure skated when I was younger. I did some taekwondo. I played soccer, so I mean, I guess there was running in that, but that's more like I thought of it more as like sprinting. You know, it wasn't really long distance. And then when I was in university, I was playing some women's league volleyball, but that was kind of it. It was once a week, and I'm like, okay, well, I need to do something. So my girlfriends and I started running. I went to the U of A, so we would run in the Edmonton River Valley. Um, and it was just something easy that we could do, you know, between classes, like at any time, and it was social. And I don't know, I guess I like kind of stopped hating it. I was like, maybe this isn't so bad. And I had a boyfriend at the time who was a pretty good runner, and so we would go sometimes. And but I kind of like started liking it, I guess. And then um, I think I was 19 or 20, and I remember that getting my first runner's high. I had run 12K. It was like 6K out, 6K back, and I came home and I felt amazing. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is the best. Like I can't wait to do this again." And so when I was 20, I did a semester in New Zealand, and so the semester before that I had taken off and I was working, and I was working a super boring job, like a 9 to 5 where my mom was working. It was just like filing, and it was terrible. And so I was like, I need to do something that's a bit exciting. So I signed up for Edmonton's hypothermic half marathon, which is in February. So I trained for my first half marathon through the Edmonton winter, which was absolutely brutal. Like I remember, you know, coming home, my eyelashes were white. I couldn't feel my fingers and toes. I was in like 6 layers. Like it was brutal. But I was really liking it, and this was through the running room, you know. So I had like my first kind of taste of community, like running with a group, and we would do like I think it was our speed workouts on Tuesday or something, and then hill workouts on Wednesday, and then our Sunday long runs, and then I kind of would piece things through. And I mean, I didn't know anything about like run programming at the time or whatever, so I was just kind of doing whatever the running room said. And then so I did my first half marathon and I was like, okay, I did it. Like that was pretty cool. And then I did another one when I was in New Zealand. And then that was all road running.
Yeah.
So fast forward, we moved to Victoria in 2008. And then I think it was through girlfriends that I kind of got into the trails here. Um, I remember particularly like going out by where you live now and doing like Pickles Bluff and just being like, oh my gosh, this lookout is like the best. And I kind of got into the trail scene. And then my first trail race was I think in 2017, which was on Salt Spring when they had one of the Vancouver Island trail races there. And that one was probably about 21, 22K, maybe something like that. Um, Loved it. And then it was just like every year it kind of got a bit longer. 2019, I turned 35, so I did Survival of the Fittest 35K in Squamish. And then
Yeah.
2020, I was like, okay, I'm going to do my first 50K. And then, of course, that race didn't happen, so I did my own 50K. And then it was like, okay, now I got to do a real 50K. So I did the Finny 50K that you did in
Mm-hmm.
2021. And then
Mm-hmm.
Lindsay was like, let's do the 100. And I was like, I don't know if I can do 100K. Like, I've only done 50. That double, really? Doing that course again after saying I will never do that again. But I also remember her being like, if not now, when? So I was like, okay, Valentine's Day, pull the trigger. Did that one, did the 100K. The next year, we did, I did a 50K, and then we did the Squamish 50 miler. And so I was like, okay, like I've done the 50K, I've done the 50 miler, I've done the 100K, and then now I'm turning 40. I think I have to do a 100 miler. So the distances kind of kept creeping up, and then okay, I found out I had qualified for UTMB. Well, I have to do UTMB, of course. So yeah, I feel like my kind of trajectory with trail running was like a gradual build.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I did start like I remember doing I think the for the cause like the breast cancer one back in Edmonton, a 5K. That was the
Oh.
first probably race that I had ever done, and that was
Yeah.
probably in like I don't know 2004 something like that, 2003. Um, and then like I did do a road 10K and a road marathon before I kind
Mm-hmm.
of got to the trail. So I feel like I did some of the shorter road races before I got into the really long trail stuff. And it's just kind of like, yeah, crept up and continued to get longer. And I feel like, the longer you run, the longer you have that aerobic base. And so it's just kind of like layer upon layer upon layer, So, um, yeah, and now here we are. So I guess I've been running for over 20 years now,
Yeah.
but the trail stuff has been really, I would say, the last like 8 years, like kind of since I've had both of my kids, um, that I've been kind of more into the trail scene. I don't know. Did that
Yeah.
answer your question? I forget what you just.
Totally. Yeah, no. And I just think it's helpful to hear that, when you look day to day, it might seem like this all happened fairly quickly in these big jumps. But when you say like 20 years, that's a long time to be working at something. And I'm sure there was many periods where you were, not running at all, or,
Totally.
it's like life ebb and flows. You had two babies, all these things were happening. And
Yeah.
so I feel like, I don't know, I just think that those kinds of like stories are so relatable and helpful for maybe people who are like wanting to get into running and maybe like aren't seeing the success or like aren't being able to like jump into these big distances, and it's like, well, like that doesn't happen overnight, right?
Yeah,
Not for everybody anyways.
definitely.
And when you were sorry, go ahead.
No, nothing. I was just going to say, I remembered the second part of your question, and sorry, this is going to be a tangent now, but just about the female representation on start lines or whatever.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I feel like maybe at some of the shorter races, it's a bit more equal. But like we touched on before, like at UTMB, that was certainly not the case. Like overwhelmingly male.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think a big part of that is just women don't have the time to train, whether it be
Yeah.
because they're, a mom or whatever. They don't put themselves first or that as a priority or whatever. And it's definitely a juggle for me as a mom to be able to train for that. But I think that as women, we do need to step onto the start lines amidst all the men and be like, we can do this too. Like, like I knew that it was a sacrifice training for that, but I also felt almost like this responsibility, like to represent women because I had heard that it was so underrepresented, and to be like, we need to be there. Like there need to be more women, and I kind of touched on this in an Instagram post yesterday, but like when you see somebody doing that, and when you see somebody like you, um, in sport or on a start line or whatever, then it kind of gives you the possibility of doing it too. You're like, oh, there is another mom that's on the start line. Like maybe I can do that too. Or like, there is when you see yourself, or like girls watching other, say, like female hockey players playing hockey on TV. When you like see yourself in that, you're more likely to want to try.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I feel like that probably applies across all minorities, right?
For sure.
Um, and I think I thought about that a lot, the kind of question of like, why are there such few women like at UTMB, for example? Like, yeah, what what drives that? And I think to your point, I'm sure a lot of it is just time. Yes, being moms, being that sort of role in a household oftentimes. But it's funny because I think, now like 2026, where we live, like we're lucky to live in the west coast of Canada where I think things feel pretty equal. Like, you don't feel these huge, I don't know,
Yeah.
big differences in,
Yeah.
yeah, disparity in between men and women. I don't know, just maybe I'm just living in a bubble because that's who I surround myself with too, is
Right.
people who, we all look at each other as equals. And but then yeah, you kind of have these experiences of like going to races like that, and and I guess too, even in my corporate job, it is very apparent that it is not equal, right? And sort of the higher up the chain you go, the fewer and fewer women you see. And
Right.
so things like that are kind of stark reminders that we still have a long way to go, and there still
Definitely.
is cause for doing things like this. So yeah, I think it's just yeah, to your point, like almost like you feel yeah, a bit of a responsibility and desire to contribute to improving that.
Totally. Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to ask you about, in your experience of getting into sport and running in particular, maybe, but just kind of across the board, I don't know. Would you say when you were younger, was it driven by, what was it driven by? Were you driven by wanting to lose weight or aesthetic reasons? Like, was there any part of that played into I don't know, your outlook on wanting to participate in these kinds of things? And maybe if that was the case, like how has that evolved?
I think when I was younger, like a child, middle school, I would say up to university, um, I never participated in sport because of aesthetic reasons ever. Like that just wasn't even, I just never really thought about that. Like I guess I just never associated playing sports with like looking a certain way. But then I think once I got into university and I, had like put on the freshman 15, as a lot of people do, then you're like, oh, well, actually, maybe running does change the way that you look or helps you lose weight or whatever. And so, yeah, I think part of it for sure in university was for the aesthetic reason. And then you do see your body start to change shape. And then, of course, you get the other people's comments, right? Which just then perpetuates it and feeds it. And then, um, yeah, like I think for me, it was more in my 20s where um, I was running a lot and I was marathon training. And definitely underfueling, not knowing, how much we actually needed. Um, and for sure, like that was for us aesthetic reasons. I mean, also performance, but also aesthetic for sure. Um, and I think that continued until I probably had my kids. And then it was like, I had been running for a while, and running with my kids in the stroller was like a stress reliever. Like, I think it was like, I need to get out to like clear my mind, do something for me, because the other 23 hours of the day are like literally for my baby. Um, and, and yeah, like I think for the last, whatever, 12 years, there's definitely been that shift of like, for aesthetic reasons to more of like a soul reason. Like running fills my soul with joy, especially trail running. Um, it's for the relationships, like, connecting with girlfriends in the trails, in the conversations that we have. It's for like the the aesthetics of the nature, like, seeing the trees, and like literally nature change through the seasons as you're running, for the sunrises. And yeah, I feel like definitely my relationship with, yeah, just around like body image and aesthetics and stuff has drastically changed from like 20 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think I kind of knew the answer to that question. I guess it was a leading question, but I think yeah, we've talked a lot about that because we've kind of both had that experience of like, and I think we'd be hard pressed to find a woman who hasn't had that experience at some point in her life, and maybe men too.
Sure.
I'm not like
Yeah,
maybe that's on the male side as well, but I just know so many of my friends and peers who are female have that experience of getting into some form of exercise, whatever it is, just because of this idea that, we're supposed to look a certain way, and that the idea is to get smaller and skinnier
exactly.
and leaner and all these things. And then like the other side of that is nutrition, right?
Hmm.
And I know we've talked a lot about this too, just with like how our relationship with that has changed over time. But I mean, for me, it's been honestly like, I would say pretty recent, because when I look back even to getting into running, really, when I think about the first, long runs I did or races that I did, and I can't remember exactly what I ate or took in, but I know it wasn't a lot. And it's kind of
Totally.
amazing to think that when we look now to how we view it now and how much we fuel for the kinds of activities we do, it's crazy the where we were starting with, right?
Absolutely. Like, I don't think I took in any nutrition when I did my first few half marathons. Like, I don't think I took in
Yeah.
anything. I know I definitely did when I did my marathon. But then, like, I don't remember if I ate anything in my first trail race. That was like, yeah, 22K or whatever, which I don't even know how long that took me, probably 3 hours or something.
Yeah,
Like,
that's the
you
long
know,
time.
ridiculous thinking about that now, but yeah, like you, I probably have only really started fueling in the last like 3 or 4 years, maybe five, like really started fueling a lot more. um and yeah, I think so much of it is just around education and
Yeah.
like culture, and who you surround yourself with,
Yes.
because I think especially in the trail world, like fueling is just such a big part of it, and especially in our club, like we're sticklers for making sure that you eat. But like, I think in the road world, like it's just not, or maybe it is now, I don't know, because I haven't been in that world for a while.
Sure.
But like, when I was in that world like 4 or 5 years ago, and previous to that, like we would never take in fuel during a workout, or water, as if I'd ever
Yeah.
bring water. And we were running like almost 20K some days. And now I'm just like, oh my gosh, I take like my little handheld water bottle with electrolytes with me on like a 10K trail. You know, like I had my water with me for
Totally.
I took a gel. Like it's just so much different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we've both come a long way.
Totally. And again, I think that, like you said, who we surround ourselves with, and like obviously, like with you and Nico and Peak Endurance, like there's a huge emphasis on that education side of things. And again, yeah, I sometimes think, oh, everybody knows this stuff. Like everybody knows that you should be eating so much more and all these things. But every once in a while, I don't know, I'll go on a run with somebody or I'll be part of something where, you kind of just notice that like, oh, I'm the only one here who's taking in anything. I'm the only
Really?
person who's had a gel this whole workout.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, oh no, I think that is still an issue. I
Yeah.
think that is still prevalent. It's just like you said, it depends kind of who you spend time with and maybe the education on it. Because I think, like you said earlier, it's not even sometimes that people, or maybe oftentimes, aren't even intentionally doing this, right? They're not thinking, oh, I'm restricting myself, and maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But I think a lot of the times it's just not knowing like how much you actually need. And even today, I catch myself on that sometimes because it's easy to think, oh, I'm only going for an hour and a half, and yeah, okay, like I know it's all relative, but now an hour and a half isn't that long to me. And so I'll just be like, oh, it's no big deal. I don't really need to take anything with me. But I think when you start to realize how you can set yourself up for success for the next day, or, your strength workout that evening, or whatever that looks like, or just your cognitive ability, so
Exactly.
you're not hangry,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
so I think for me, it was just such an evolution and such a light bulb going off of, oh, all these things can be better if I
Yeah.
just eat more. And then it's
Totally.
like, oh, it's so simple. Like I just, you kind of feel stupid for not behaving that way before.
Totally. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Um, yeah, I think there's a lot of people that either just don't know or whatever, but once they do know and they try it, I've had like nutrition clients who, when they do start feeling same thing, they're like, oh, I can feel this way, or like, oh, if I eat before I run in the morning, like I actually can feel decent. Like I don't have to just
Yeah.
feel terrible. Like I just thought that if I ran early in the morning, like you just don't have energy or you just feel
Yeah.
like crap. And it's like, oh, actually, it doesn't have to feel this way. Yeah.
Totally.
Hmm.
And I think that's too because a lot of it running is hard. Like all of these
Yeah.
things are hard, right?
Yeah.
Like getting up in the morning to go on a run is inherently hard. So it's easy to like attribute any kind of bad feeling around that to like, oh, it's just supposed to be hard. Which
Totally.
like it is hard, but it can be made better
Exactly.
by like these kinds of things to help you out, right? So
Totally.
yeah, such a
Yeah.
big emphasis there.
Definitely.
Um, Okay, well, I feel like that is lots of good nuggets in there, and I feel like I hope people kind of take some from that, and I hope it's just relatable because again, I think that we surround ourselves with people that do a lot of this stuff, but I think there's so many people out there that are getting into this or just sort of learning these things, and so you know the more we talk about it on a wider scale, I think
Mhm.
the more the messaging goes around, and I think that's improvement for everybody. But maybe I'll just kind of end with you on. I know you said you aren't really like you haven't signed up for any races. What does your athletic journey look like next? Like, do you have any maybe far out goals? Maybe they're not this year. Is there anything
Mhm.
that you want to share about like what's next for you from an athlete side of things, not necessarily like personal, professional, but
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, I don't know. This year is my husband Shane's year to compete, and so he did a couple of trail races just locally in the fall, and he's got a couple more in Vancouver that he's doing this spring, and then he's doing some bike racing and a triathlon this summer. So I'm excited to be able to support him. And yeah, I mean, I might jump into a couple local races this year, but
Yeah.
I think after last year having done, 100K down in Oregon and then
Yeah.
UTMB in Europe, I want to do more local stuff, and I feel kind of like the pendulum swung the other way for me this year. So yeah, if I do sign up for anything, it will be something that's more local. And as for the future, I don't know. I mean, I definitely don't feel like I'm hanging up the old runners, but I just don't know exactly what it's going to look like. And for me, a big part of it is like it has to excite me because I have to
Mm-hmm.
feel motivated, right? Like it's got to be something that you're willing to put in the miles for, and that you know that when you're like deep in it, that you'll keep pushing through. So yeah, haven't figured out what that is yet, but I'm sure there'll be something next year. Yeah.
I'm sure there will be too. But I'm glad you brought that up because I feel like maybe you could share a little bit about that just so if there's parents out there listening, because I think that, I've seen you navigate the challenges of both you and your husband being very athletic and very like you guys love being outdoors and you love doing all these activities, but you've got two kids and there's jobs and all these things. And so like maybe you could share a little bit about how you like, you talked about the last year was your year and this year
Mhm.
is Shane's year. I don't know, just maybe like the juggle for like other parents that are out there, because again, I'm sure people like maybe saw you do that big year and they're like, wow, that's crazy. Like, how did she have time to do all of that and be a mom and still work, Like, and it's not like for you, it was a sacrifice, and it means like that it's not going to look like that for you next year. So I just think that's maybe like important to share.
Yeah, I mean, I feel very fortunate that my parents live here and that they
Mm,
often will take the kids overnight. And so I do a lot of like most of my long training runs, I would do at least during the year. Like if my parents had the kids on a Friday night, then I would do my long run on the Saturday morning, and Shane would do his long ride or whatever as well on the Saturday morning. And I mean, through the summer when I was training for UTMB and it was like the long run Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Maybe my parents would take the kids one day, but it's not like they're taking them every morning,
yeah.
And so it's just like a lot of communication for Shane and I. Just like, okay, who's going out this time and who's going out this time? Or like when we used to spend our summers camping, it would be like, okay, who's taking the early shift? Like one person would get up early, do the early run or whatever, and then when they got back the second person would, and that's often what it looks like for us. Or but I mean, now I feel like with my job I have a bit more flexibility during the
Hmm.
day, so I can run while the kids and Shane are at work, and so it doesn't really affect anyone. And then on the weekends, I mean, our kids both have sports, so we're juggling that as well, but it's just a lot of communicating and supporting each other. And if you do have grandparents or can get a babysitter every now and then to help you out, if there's like key workouts. I remember Fawn talking about that when she was on the podcast. Like sometimes you have to get the babysitter if your partner's out of town or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Just getting that support. And it's not perfect, and you just have to accept that. Like there's going to be times where you miss your run or you're just exhausted because you've been up with your kids or whatever, and you just have to accept that like we're not professional athletes. This is not our job, this is a hobby.
Yeah.
Running
Yeah.
around in the forest is fun, but like if we take it too seriously and we like sacrifice everything else so that we can go run around in the forest, like that's not the life I want. Like I love it,
Right.
but not at the expense of like never spending time with my kids or having energy for
Yeah.
them or doing any other social thing or whatever. So it's definitely a juggle, and it's never perfect, but you just do the best you can.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And yeah, it's been so great for me to, spend time with like you and Lindsay and our other friends who are moms and like seemingly do it all. But, you guys are always telling me, like, you'll still do this kind of stuff. It'll just look differently, and you just won't have time for like junk
Yeah.
miles. You won't have time for like junk workouts or whatever,
Yeah.
which is essentially like, oh, just because I had time, I went for a run. It'll
Yeah.
be like, you just have to be a lot more intentional.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's, I don't know. It's just always been inspiring to me because I see you and Shane, and I'm like, oh, this is Nico and I in our future. So like, we got to be taking notes here because like, I think people look at our lifestyle and like often will say to us like, oh, wait till you have kids. Like, there's no way you're going to be doing all that stuff, right? And it's always like, oh God, this is scary. But
Well, I mean, you guys might not be able to do the amount of doubles that you do. Like, usually
yeah,
as a parent, you're like, if I can do one thing in a day, I'm happy. Like, yeah, because
yeah,
I think it's hard to do more than one thing in a day, so that might
totally,
have to change, but you guys will figure it out. Yeah.
yeah,
You find a rhythm.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and anyways, I have you to lean on through that
You
process.
got
So,
it, girl.
okay, well, we'll wrap it up. I know you probably got to go make your kids dinner or something like that. So I'm
Looking
gonna let
to
you
the
go
mall.
to the mall. I feel like this is the story of your life
Oh
right now.
no. She's got two birthday parties tomorrow. Wake's got one, so it's getting the last minute
Wow.
gifts.
Okay, well, I'll let you go. Thank you so much for joining. And yeah, listeners, if you are going to be in and around the Victoria area on February 28th, sign up for Seymour Bloom. I think it's already, I don't know, over 60% sold out or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, I haven't
Yeah,
checked
you
it.
guys will probably make an announcement about that soon. But anyways, it's selling out, so folks, get on it. Yeah, can't wait. And Andie, I love you, and you
Love you
inspire me
too.
daily. So thank you for being
Thanks,
here.
buddy. Thank you for having me. This was super fun.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.